Well, let me just say, just because you don't know what's going on, don't mean that nothing ain't going on. And I say that to the wider community as well, and certainly everybody outside of 27. I haven't really taken a break. We've been actually canvassing since February 2013, right after the last election. No reason to speak to you, though, or any other media in that campaign, because it was really about getting on the doorstep and talking to the people of 27. I think most people will appreciate that when you lose by 10 votes, you kind of take it personal, because you know more than 10 people who said they were coming out to vote and they didn't. And so there was a real desire to figure out why, and to be able to do some things in this community that we'd become familiar and friendly with. And so we set about doing that. You know, we set about setting up a calendar of things that we would do. We've had about 50 odd clinics every month since the last election, except for August, when we take off, because it's emancipation and we deserve freedom too. And we've worked in the community quietly and throughout that period. The fact that now we're at an election and people now are aware that I'm running again, thinks that, you know, I'm making a comeback, or whatever adjectives they wish to use to describe it. But we've not actually stopped, and so we've spent a fair amount of time, you know, getting to know this community quite well. In fact, it runs from Longford Hill to Burnt House Hill, all of Harbour Road and Middle Road being the demarcation line. You know, currently we have 1,272 constituents in this area, and we've made an attempt to touch virtually all of them. Some of them more than once when they've been welcoming, some just once, because they made it clear that, you know, our presence was not required or desired. And so we've worked quite hard, you know, to make an impact in this community, and it is about service, and that's the reason for doing what we're doing. You know, I think that we had some success in the PLP government previously. I know that some people like to try and focus and highlight on some of the challenges that we faced and view them in a negative light. But I always concentrate on the positive. I look at the number of families that we've housed during our whole 13 years in government. And I am quite impressed with my role in that, and the team effort that we had in providing not just affordable housing for people for ownership, but affordable housing for rentals as well. And so that's what motivates me to continue to do this. I think I still have something to contribute. People are willing to still support and encourage me, and so I press on.
Over the years, you say you were looking for answers. Did you get them?
Very much the same, yes. In the main, the people that did not come out at the last election were disappointed, to use a nice word, that you could broadcast in us, the PLP, and some of the decisions that we made. And we made some mistakes, we accept that. And so we've made a real effort to try and go back to our roots. And that's where I think we lost our way. I think people understand and know that. I think that there's been a change in not just leadership, but in personnel. And we've gone back to what our founding fathers believed in: helping the underprivileged, standing for justice and for what is right, and doing the best by Bermudians. Obviously, we're in a school. The bell went off.
Do you feel that the PLP as a party has acknowledged what you just described?
Absolutely.
Mistakes from the
Absolutely. I think that certainly the current leader has repeatedly reminded us that, you know, we have to touch people where they live. And that's been our core founding principle from 1965. That, you know, we canvass, we touch people. All the other stuff is fluff. But that, you know, elections really are one on the doorstep, and our connection with the electorate has always been very much engaged on the doorstep. And so as a result of canvassing, you get to really know folk, and they get to express, oftentimes in the comfort of their own home, their true feelings, which they don't necessarily do in a public setting or public environment, and neither should they. It's private, and so they are able to express to you exactly how they feel about some of the deviations we made from the path that we should have been on, and what we need to do in order to correct that. I actually like canvassing. It's the best part of this whole process. Well, no, it's the second best part. The best part actually is solving problems. But canvassing really gets you in touch with Bermudians where they live. And so you're able to discuss and share with them some of our plans for how we can fix some of the challenges that we face. Our people are suffering, and they've been suffering for a long time. And I think that they are more interested in not identifying who's at fault, but figuring out how it is that we can fix the problems together. And so a lot of the ideas that you will see coming from the PLP are not just from us. They are coming from folk on the doorstep. They want to work, they want to participate, and they want to be a part of a process to improve not just their lives, but the lives of people in the community.
Your platform, the party platform, was released last night.
Yes.
Give us your thoughts on the overall platform, and more so in comparison to what the OBA has released.
I have no idea what they released. It's not something that I spend a whole lot of time either commenting to folk about or thinking about. That's for others to do. My job is to try and convince folk and explain to folk what it is that we intend doing. And the platform really sets out, quite clearly a roadmap for recovery for us. And it does identify and demonstrate for folk that, we have found our way back to our roots, if you wish. What we've said on the doorstep is that this document, in fact, even though they call it a platform, sets out a number of promises that we make to the electorate. That if they support us, that in the next term, these are the things that we will do. And it is a set of promises, and it's a set of promises that we take seriously, and we will follow as a roadmap to get to the end of the next term if we're fortunate enough to be the government. And the people of Bermuda should use that as a report card, quite frankly, both of them, to say, okay, they done one, tick it off, tick it off, tick it off. And that's really what is required. Democracy works best when people participate. Part of the reason for the PLPs going off the rails and being allowed to is that people sat at home and decided that, I'm going to fix them by not voting for them and not coming out to vote in the next election. That's not how democracy is supposed to work. You're supposed to be able to find the person who sat in your living room or on your porch and expounded to you what they were going to do as your representative. The moment they go off the reservation, you should be dialing 1-800-MP and saying, what is going on? That's not what you shared with us in our homes. And what you will find is that when people do that, the whole perception of politics and democracy changes, because everybody then participates, and they participate not just on polling day, but they participate throughout the year. And in our case, we live in the community with these folk. I mean, I was in the grocery store last night, and two people came up to me. One guy chased me in the parking lot and said, I live in your constituency, blah, blah, can I get your number? I said, well, it's on the PLP website. I gave it to him, whatever. And you can talk to, you can chat with them. And the key is trying to solve and fix their problems. We have a little bit of knowledge in terms of how the bureaucracy works. And so we're better able to maneuver that in order to get the results that the people are looking for.
The last time you served, you spent some time dealing with immigration. Mm-hmm. Give us your thoughts on immigration today in this country.
Well, all of my observations will be anecdotal. I have none of the data or research. But I do take what people say, and I am observant of what is going on in our country. And there seems to have been an opening of the floodgates in terms of people being allowed to come in here. They're working and our people are not. Now, I've said on the doorstep, and I say repeatedly, you know, that you will never get me to apologize, ever, for being pro-Bermudian. You will never get me, no one will get me to do that. Now, what that means is, that doesn't mean that I'm anti-anybody or anything. Every foreign friend that I have, and most of them are Caribbean, because that's where I go the most, they're proud of where they are, or where they come from. And they are not ashamed to say, I'm Jamaican, or I'm Bajan, or I'm St. Lucian. I just, you know, it is mind-boggling to me that if you stand up and say, you know, I am pro-Bermudian, and I want to see Bermudians succeed, and I want to see them ascend to the highest offices in business and politics and government and whatever else, that you then that makes you anti-something or the other. I just don't understand it. And so I don't try. I remain pro-Bermudian. And what reinforces that for me is that all you have to do is wander around this country and just talk to some strangers, Bermudians, because of all shapes and sizes and races and creeds, they are doing amazing things. I had some of that experience in government, in ministries that I served in, where you had young Bermudians who were, you know, in either designate or stand in line doing their penance in order to ascend to directing certain areas of government, and they've been successful. And one classic case comes immediately to my mind when I was at Works in Engineering. The guy who runs Tynes Bay today is a young man named Kirk Outerbridge. When I went to the ministry, he was trying to get his designation as an engineer, and he was designated to take over from a guest worker as the manager of Tynes Bay. And I just couldn't believe, as a Bermudian, that there was a Bermudian who was capable of running an incinerator. We only have one. And people explained to me who this young man, I, you know, went to Tynes Bay and I said, I'm looking for Kirk. And found him, and I said, you know, I just was so proud as a Bermudian that here's somebody who's had the foresight to say, I want to do this, and gone away and got everything. And I asked him, I said, you know, what do you have to do now in order to be able to take over this job? And he said, I have to go and run an incinerator where there's snow. And I said, okay, I'll bite. Do we know of an incinerator somewhere where we can send you where there's snow? I didn't even take the bait that, you know, I don't think we're ever going to have snow in Bermuda, but that's what they said. And he said, oh yes, and it's all lined up, and once I do that, then I'll be able to run Tynes Bay. And so I just was so proud. I'd never met this young man before in my life, didn't know him, anything. He just was a fellow Bermudian, and he was going to do something for the first time that no Bermudian had ever done before. And so as a Bermudian, I was as proud as a peacock. And so I watched his progress, and I checked in with him periodically whilst he was abroad. And when he came back, I went to see him again, and I said, how did it go? He went, well, I'm good to go. And I said, are you ready? And he said, yes. And I said to him, I said, you know, one of the things that ministers are responsible for is providing assistance to people that work for them. I said, so if after you take over this job you need some help, put up your head and ask for it, because we don't have any problem with doing that for others. We must do it for ourselves. This has got to have been a decade ago now. Maybe close to a decade ago now. And it's doing amazingly well. So much so that he's recruited another young Bermudian who's a number 2 at Tynes Bay. Another young Bermudian from Somerset, one of the Waitwians, who's a mechanical engineer who worked for us during one summer, him and his brother. One twin is mechanical, the other one's electrical, both engineers. And both amazing young Bermudians. And so as a result, you know, that just feeds my belief that we should be proud to be Bermudian, and we should go and find the capable Bermudians that can do a lot of jobs around here that are currently being done by guest workers. And so I don't have a problem with immigration, but the thing is that there has to be a line in the sand. And I know that the real controversy in immigration, and you know, I was the face of it, so it's me. I had to carry the burden of term limits. Well, we abolished term limits, or they abolished term limits. And what's the result today? The result today is people are allowed to stay here forever. So you're creating the same situation we had when we implemented term limits. Now, I admitted, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, that maybe we should have called it something else, because every country I know that you go to as a guest worker, there's a finite date, there's a departure date when you have to actually leave. And you may not have to go home, but you cannot remain there. And so I think that, you know, whilst demonizing the process was for political folly and political gain, the reality is that 97% of the people that applied for exemptions or whatever to term limits actually got them. If they qualified, you know, there's a certain level of fairness that is in play when you say, okay, here are the criteria in order to get an exemption. It's not under the table, it's on top of the table. And if you meet that criteria, then the answer is yes. If you don't meet that criteria, then the answer is no. You can't blame somebody for doing that, because you have to tie in immigration with the schooling and the graduation and the return rate that our young people get when they come back to Bermuda. If we're not going to provide them with a job, then who's supposed to? The place where they're a guest worker? I don't think so. And so, you know, the criticism that people make of immigration, and me in particular, kind of rings a little hollow for me. I don't give a whole lot of credence to it. And I mean, the suggestion that, you know, we chased international business out here and thousands of jobs, it's absolute fiction. The results don't suggest that. And I would submit, and don't believe Burch, go and check, do the research for yourself. Businesses and international businesses in particular made a considerable amount of money during the whole 14 years of PLP governments, you know. And so the belief that, you know, that people have perpetuated, you know, if you say a lie often enough, people start to believe it. Well, the evidence doesn't support that.
You've mentioned some immigration changes that the European government has put in place. Just an overview of their term. I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it, but I'll talk about Bermudization that caused a great deal of angst amongst Bermudians. And part of that is because there are processes, you know. And even though the public doesn't necessarily intimately know what those processes are, it's our job to explain it to them. And so, when the PLP government introduced term limits and PRCs, there's a political process that you go through to inform people. And so what you do is you come up with a bunch of ideas and you publish them. And you publish them in a document that's called a green paper. And all it is a discussion paper of ideas, a multitude of them, and you distribute it widely. And if people cast their minds back, they'll recall that we went up and down the country, sharing with folk, these are the ideas. What do you think? And people had their input. And so at the end of the day, what you then come back with is you take in all that input and you make some decisions. So you say, oh yes, we can do these, and we can't do these. And then you come up with a policy paper, what you're going to do. And you call that a white paper. And you take that to Parliament. That's after all the consideration and discussion and input from the public. And you have a debate and a discussion, and if it's passed, then you implement them. This government didn't do any of that. They just decided exactly what they were going to do, either the cabinet or the caucus or whatever. And so what you had was a revolt from people. Now, to be fair, some of the decisions that they made in immigration have been resolved, because everybody accepts that if you as a Bermudian adopt a child, there should be no impediment to making that child Bermudian. And so that decision was made, it went to the committee that they formed, everybody agreed from all sides, and that's a done deal. You also have the situation where there is a fair amount of sympathy amongst every Bermudian, I think, that if you have a family of 3 children and 2 of them are Bermudian and 1 isn't, then you've got to make it right, and so the 3rd child should be a Bermudian. I mean, fair and square. On the flip side of that coin, you have people who came here on work permits, and they came to make money. Let's be crystal clear. That was the motivation, and they made a lot of money. And there must be some onus on them to have allowed their work permit to be renewed and renewed and renewed, and to have children and let them grow up to believe that they're Bermudian when they knew full well that they had no rights to remain here, other than the fact that their parents, you know, allowed themselves to be renewed work permit to be rolled over forever while they raked in the cash and ignored the fact that their children were being assimilated into our community. Now, it's a difficult decision to make, but that's part of what governing is required, making difficult decisions. We're a small country. We cannot, like America, if you're born here, you're automatically Bermudian, like it is in the U.S. And so you have to have a set of rules and regulations that everybody understands. None of this was secret. And so in the time I was in immigration, and you had families that decided, you know, when the kids were like going into primary school, I'm leaving Bermuda. I have no rights to be here, and it's unfair for my children for me to stay and continue to make money or for this country and have them grow up with an expectation that they can remain here when they have no right to do that. They have a right to be Canadian or American or British from where I am from. And so you had families that left. And so, you know, you have to try and strike a balance between the two, but there has to be some mechanism in place. The country can't be expected to accept all of the responsibility for these people who decided on monetary terms that they would remain here and did so for 20, 30, 40 years without any recourse to being Bermudian. The other aspect of it, of course, is that they made no attempt to assimilate themselves into this community either. And so I leave it hanging out there, you know, for the average Bermudian to decide. Because on the flip side of that coin, on July 7th, 2017, you have hundreds of Bermudians who are unemployed. Hundreds of Bermudian families that are on financial assistance. Hundreds of Bermudian families that could work. But you have guest workers that are taking their jobs. That's not being anti-anything. That's saying our people have to feed themselves, because if they don't, what do you think they're going to do? You're going to wake up in the middle of the night, they're going to be crawling in your window or mine, because they have to do something in order to be able to feed their families. And government's responsibilities are to ensure that people are employed. And certainly are employed over and above bringing in people to do that type of work. Now, I know the argument, one of the arguments that's going to be immediately trotted out is that, you know, Bermudians won't work for that sort of wage. Well, why not? Because you're not paying a living wage in Bermuda to Bermudians. And you need to get to that point too. That you cannot expect, and you're taking advantage of guest workers to some extent, but you also provide them with all sorts of other benefits that, you know, they don't have a family here, they don't have to, you know, oftentimes they don't have to pay electricity or those, or, you know, expenses that Bermudian families have to pay. Why don't you offer the same thing to them and see how it works out? Particularly in the hospitality industry, where, you know, in the past, the whole success of the Bermudian tourism model is predicated on Bermudians being in that industry, because nowhere in this world are they more hospitable and friendly and outgoing and willing to help tourists than Bermudians are. And you don't see that today.
You mentioned the living wage. Mm-hmm. Should there be a government-set living wage?
I think there should be, and I think that part of what's in the platform is that we will have a look at how we get to that point. And you don't do it from Mount Olympus by imposition. You talk to the people, the stakeholders, the business folk, and the chamber, and all the rest of the people that are involved, because they're employing people too. I understand, you know, the free market economy and all of that. But at the end of the day, if Bermudians cannot afford to live, then we got a problem. And the problem is only going to get worse, and it's only going to be exacerbated by the fact that Bermudians cannot afford to live in their own country or make a living in their own country. And governments have a responsibility to address that.
You mentioned that you were sticking to your decision that you made in the past on immigration. Mm-hmm. Are there any decisions that you made that you have regretted or wish you would have done differently?
The only thing I regret is I wish I had called term limits something different, as opposed to term limits. That seemed to be the magnet that attracted people to, to create all sorts of monsters. Certainly a number of the other things that we suggest to be implemented in immigration have quietly and smoothly been implemented, and I'll think of one that was just demonized. We decided that, the work permits in this country, and if you're not involved in that process, you don't understand what that means. They used to come in a piece of paper this size with a picture on it, and you had to carry it with you every time you traveled. So when you came in the airport after, 3 trips, you folded it up to fit in your wallet. It looked like crap. And, the immigration officer trying to verify that you are a bona fide work permit holder, and we suggested the work permit cards. Oh, my heavens. They said we were going back to the dark ages. It was like Hitler. It was all sorts of things. They implemented it. The current government implemented it, and they're working smoothly today. People have, and everybody accepts it's a far more practical way of doing things. It provides a means to transit the airport without the challenges of an immigration officer trying to read a piece of paper that's, ripped to shreds. So can you imagine after 3 years what the paper's going to look like? It also provides an easy way to verify, if you're sending inspectors out onto a job site, that these people are bona fide workers. They pull the card out of their pocket, and Bob's your uncle. And so there's other ideas. I know one of the criticisms, and one of the major criticisms, it's got taken on a lot less resonance today, is of course the Uyghurs. Would I make the same decision today that I made then? Of course I would. I believe then, as I do now, it was the right thing to do. Certainly, as the minister responsible for immigration, you have some responsibilities. I've never put that blame on anybody else. I looked at the act and done the research and made that decision. I still believe it was the correct decision. Now, am I happy with how subsequent to that decision it's been handled by both the Bermuda government, the British government, and the US? Of course not. People should not be left in a state of limbo. And I don't mind telling you that, I poked in trying to facilitate it, even though I've been out of government and got my knuckles wrapped. Well, I'm used to that, so that doesn't have any effect. Certainly the last governor suggested that, we should stay out of it because he had it under control. Well, he's packed up and going on British. And they're still in the state that they were in. The current one doesn't seem to have made any real effort to solve the problem either. So, rest assured, if we're successful on the 18th of July, one of the things, no matter where I am, backbench or wherever, will be to advocate and to pursue getting justice, full justice for those people and their families.
Is there a place in Bermuda politics for independence?
No, absolutely not. People that suggest that are just whistling Dixie and don't have any collective memory. We had independence in this country, but let's talk about because what's the first thing they're going to do as independence? If all 5 of them are successful, the first thing they do is band together. That's called a party. By any other name, it's called a party. Okay, so there's no role for them. What the electorate has to decide is there are 2 fundamental choices that you have. One is a party that has a social conscience, and the other one is a business party. That's the choice you have, and you'll get you've got now 2 sets of promises. You make your decision off of that. The reason how it goes off the rails and people think that politics is all negative is because you can't then go off into the stratosphere and decide that I'm going to leave it to them to fix everything for me. That's not democracy. Democracy requires that every single person participate. And in our party, it also provides for every single member of the PLP, if they wish, to turn up at Alaska Hall on a Monday night and put up their hand and ask the leader of the party, or who may be the leader of the country as well, or any other minister or shadow minister, any question they like, and make recommendations about
policies and what we should be doing and what we should be changing. And I'm going to take this opportunity to highlight again, every opportunity I get, one of the most significant achievements of the Progressive Labour Party in government in its first term was the abolition of death duties on the primary family homestead. That, I call it the Johnston Amendment. It came from a lady named Barbara Johnson, who's now passed. She was a teller in the Bank of Bermuda. She would come to Alaska Hall every Monday night and say, Mr. Cox, we have to do something about death duties. And he said, Mrs. Johnson, I'll look into it. And he did. You can imagine her pride and joy when he came back and said, we're going to do that. But it came from her, and that's how we operate. We're a ground-up party. We don't stand on high and dictate to folk. And so what I say to folk is that's the clear choice that you have in political parties. Now, you get individuals that go off the reservation in terms of what the party stands for and what the party has promised. You get rid of them. You don't get rid of the party. That's like families. You know, we're as dysfunctional as any other family in the country. We fight, we argue, we, you know, do all those negative things. But at the end of the day, we are a family who go back to our roots. We stand for justice. We stand for fairness. We stand for helping the underprivileged. And that's across the board in this country. No matter who you are. I mean, that's just our history and our legacy. And so if you believe in that, then you vote for us.
Give us your thoughts on former Premier Cox. She's handed in her membership to the party, former leader, former Premier, intends to run as an independent.
I'll say that I'm bitterly disappointed. I've had no discussions with her, so I don't know the intimate reasons for what she's doing other than what's been printed in the media. But based on my own experience with certainly the printed media, I don't take much of what they say as valid. But what I would say is I'm disappointed. I think that, you know, that's not a route that I would take.
Do you feel that it might cement an OBA victory in that particular constituency?
No.
If PLP win on the 18th, would you like to serve under the cabinet?
I'll serve wherever I'm asked. I mean, that's always been my mantra. I'd happily go off and do you know, whatever it is that I'm asked to do. I am looking forward to a PLP victory. I'm looking forward to, I have a long list of issues that have been raised in this constituency that I'd like to see addressed. Now, I'm not so sure. I'm a hard worker, so I probably could manage both, but I very much like to see us do some things that fix some things in this community. That's one of the things that has given me one of the greatest joys of service in every cabinet. I mean, one of the things that we've been doing up here, and again, it comes from a constituent. Mrs. Tucker of Constance Crescent suggested to us that some issues with buses coming over City Hill. And I think we're on the threshold of doing that. We're quietly going about, you know, without any fanfare, talking to DPT, talking to the people in the community, because there are some challenges, and working through how it is that we can do that. I'm very encouraged by the receptiveness and the positiveness that we got out of the Department of Public Transport in terms of coming up with a trial period where more buses will come over City Hill and help the people of this community. And it's things like that I'd like to see. But if wherever the leader sends me to serve, I'll be happy to do so.
I think it would be fair to say that any elected MP is going to work hard for their constituency. Looking on the broader scheme.
I don't know how fair that is. That's a throwaway comment, really, because some don't. To be perfectly honest, some don't.
What would you like to tackle, or where do you see the priorities in dealing with issues that affect the country as a whole?
Oh, nationally now, I think they're the same as what's enunciated in the platform. Education, seniors, and the economy. And that's replicated throughout this district as well. I can tell you, we started in February 2013 with clinics, and the very first person who came to the clinic was a senior. And for the first 2 years, it was almost exclusively seniors who were coming to try and, you know, get us to help them through the myriad of challenges that they were facing as more and more benefits were withdrawn. And so it's important to us. We have one rest home in this community, and that's the Lorraine Rest Home. And so you get to, and there's a large segment of seniors that live in this community. I mean, we've had a program since 2013, I guess. Every hurricane, every pending hurricane, we would. The first time we did it, I said, you know, we're going to go visit all the seniors, and of course we read the list, and it was like over 300. I'm like, okay, Burch, maybe that's not a good idea to be able to try and do that in 3 days. And so then we went up the age to 70. We still had a significant number of seniors, and so then what we said, okay, we got this. We ended up doing and recording a robocall, and you could identify, you know, all the seniors in the community. And having been in national security, I know what concerns them. It isn't all this highfalutin stuff about, you know, EMO. They don't even know what that is. What they really want is the basic information of it's likely point of close approach, where they can, what number they can call for assistance, and the radio station where they can get information. And so we did a very basic, simple robocall to seniors in particular, but in the community in general. And then it got to be routine. You know, all you had to do is change the date, name of the hurricane, and basically and confirm the information was the same. And then and we farmed it out to them. And so what we found that was very helpful to them. They didn't have to wade through a whole lot of information that they're getting, you know, in a condensed way, that they could be helpful to them and to understand. And one, I mean, we have the oldest resident in this constituency, probably knocking on 100 right now. I won't call her name because I don't have permission to do so, but she lives on City Hill. And we went to her house one hurricane, and we always find her sitting at her kitchen table, and she has, you know, like a barn door. So, I mean a barn, but that's what I call it. It's, you know, the half door. So the top half's open, the bottom half is bolted. And as we're walking up the walkway to her, and you know, and was singing out, and she's sitting at our table, and so, you know, she said, you know, come in, and we went in, and we said, you know, come check on you for the hurricane, and this and that. She says, you know how old I am? I said, yes, Mrs. So-and-so. She says, you know how many hurricanes I'm seeing? I'm going to be just fine. And so, you know, you got right away that, you know, not only was she appreciative of the fact that we came, but she also made the point that, you know, I'm good. I've been to a few of these, and I know what to do and what have you. And so dealing with seniors and helping them really is a joy. It's not a chore at all. I mean, they are, first of all, they're solid. First of all, they're crystal clear in what they want, and usually it's not a whole lot of stuff. I mean, we've interacted with a number of them. One last week wanted to see me, and the person who spoke to one of them said, you know, you must go and see it. And I said, relax, I got this. I know basically all of them. And so we went to her house. And so we expected that she wanted something from us. Well, she did, but not in the sense that you would. She said, I got 3 things to tell you. I said, yes. And she said, I'm 94 years of age. I said, yeah, I know that. I'm voting for you. I said, thank you for that. And I want to see a PLP government before I die. Again, another PLP government before I died. I said, there you go. And I said, what else? She said, no. And now I want you to go downstairs to sort out my son. And so on that basis, you know, you go away with the full knowledge that they are crystal clear in their minds about what is required. And it isn't a lot. So it should not be a great effort for us to make the last days of their lives as comfortable as possible. I mean, she lives in her own home. You know, we've gotten ideas as we've been on the campaign trail about how it is that we can help without spending a whole lot of money or spending any money, really. Just in terms of if you visit them, you're able to see how you cut the grass, send somebody cut the grass. You know, because it's something that, you know, is a challenge for them. In terms of young people, I think we believe that if you fix education, a whole lot of the other challenges that we face will fall away. And I don't see it as a difficult task. I see few things as a difficult task. I see them as a challenge. And I guess you might say it's the military mind. It starts with, what is the problem? And then you start methodically figuring out how you fix it. And so in the case of education, I think that everybody could get to the point where there are some schools that probably should be closed because of the declining birth rate, but that's not where you start the conversation. You must start the conversation with the key stakeholders who are parents and teachers about raising the quality of education for everybody in the system. And if you do that, then no parent I've ever met has said, "Oh no, I don't want you to improve the quality of education, so my little Johnny or my little Janie don't learn." Every parent is going to be on side with that, and so they're going to be on receive. And you actually then must do it. Once you actually do that, then the historical connection that parents and adults and all of us have to the school that we went to 20, 30, 40 years ago kind of sort of wanes, because you're dealing with the now, not before, because you got a new set of teachers and principals, you got a new set of circumstances. And so if you raise the quality of education and you start to see some improvement at every level, then you can start looking at, okay, maybe we should consolidate so we can improve it further. Parents will then be on receive, because they'll have seen that you not only said it, but you actually did it in terms of improving education. And so now we're going to improve the infrastructure and increase the ability for young people to be able to learn at an accelerated rate. Of course they're going to go along with it. And you don't have to do that with a whole lot of money initially. Do the research. I mean, if people cast their minds back, and if they want to, remember, we implemented mandated class sizes in 99 September, 2000 and 2001, without having to spend a penny, because the birth rate had declined then too. And so what you do, you phased it in. You looked at the numbers and you said, oh, I could do P1 this year without increasing class size, without having to build anything. And so what you do is to reduce the number of children in the classroom, because research supported the fact that if you had less 5-year-olds, 15 to 17 of them, they stand a better chance of learning than 30. And then the same with P2 and P3. And so now it's across the board. So to a great extent, I think people think that primary schools, in terms of the instruction and the quality of education, probably needs some fine-tuning. You need to go a little higher and a little more in terms of some of the other things. I mean, there is a plan in here to abolish middle schools, which everybody seems to accept as part of the key components in creating gangs in this country. And if you think about it logically, that's what we've done. They go primary school in Somerset, they go middle school in Somerset. So they never actually get exposed to anybody outside of their community until they actually go to one of the mega senior schools. And so you already got to stick together, because I know you, and I know my little group, and there's this little group over here. And so if you break down some of those barriers, a whole lot of the other issues that we face will fall away as well.
Do you have any aspirations to serve as Premier?
Anybody who enters this game thinks they could do that job. Anybody who does thinks they could do that job. We have a leader who has been elected and is doing an outstanding job as far as I'm concerned. And so I would support him. It's not something I've had a conversation with anybody about. It's not something I've thought about. It's not something that I spend a whole lot of time thinking about. First of all, one has to be elected. So you're dealing with fiction at the moment. I'm a non-elected member of Parliament. So that's the first hurdle. One has to be elected in order to even think that that's a possibility. There's only one person I know who didn't believe that and tried that one, but we won't go. That's a story for another day.
In wrapping up, give us some closing words to the people of Bermuda.
Well, I think that the people of Bermuda have a decision to make in this election, probably more important than any other. One of the most encouraging things for me about our democracy is that I think they're the most educated they've ever been. at the last election, we took a decision that we would write to every single person who voted. There was 899 voters who participated in the election. And it wasn't a throwaway comment. I firmly believe that the people who participated in the democratic process deserve to be acknowledged and encouraged and commended. Because if people actually remember, I mean, all the boogeyman stuff about, you know, both sides really is just that. It is pure fiction. Because people said, you know, there's going to be riots at the PLP laws and all this other negative sort of stuff. We as a democracy, so we as a country, we as a people, had a smooth and uneventful transition of government. And, I mean, of the closest of margins, 15 votes in this country could have changed the outcome of the election. So people, you know, even in our own constituency, people are saying, you should have had a recount. Not necessary, man. Not necessary at all, because if you have people in the room, everybody has people in the room, and every 50 votes you agree. 50, you counted 50 votes, you got 20, I got 30. Everybody agreed? Yes. And you go through that every 50 votes, when you get to the end, you can't say, oh, you made a mistake, I want to really? You have to accept the outcome the way it is. And what it demonstrated was that our democracy then had matured. I believe it's matured even more. And so whoever forms the next government, I expect that it will be a PLP government, but whoever forms the next government is going to be held accountable to a much higher standard than any government has ever been in our history. Because the people understand that they have power. They have power beyond polling day. They have power every day. And they know that now, and we've promulgated that view in this constituency. I've encouraged people who've challenged us about, you know, you're allowed to say what you want, what we want to hear, and then you want. I'm saying no. Well, first of all, that's not my history, and fortunately, I have one. People understand that what I say, I mean, and what I mean, I say. And so what I've said to folk is that, you know, and then some people look at me in horror, but I believe it. I say to folk, if you are not prepared, if you're going to support me on polling day, then you must support and participate every other day in between. Because I don't consider myself the Lone Ranger. I consider myself Captain America, where I could fix everything by myself. It has to be done with the people going with you. And I think that if everybody across this country understands that, you know, once I take mine, that, you know, I'm not be sending these 36 people off to Siberia where I can never speak to or touch them or communicate with them again until the next election, and so I have to suffer in silence. No, sir. Everybody's in the phone book. Everybody, you know where they're going to be on a Friday. You know where some of them are going to be on a Tuesday. You know where they shop. You know where they got their haircut. You know where they worship. You know all of those things. You must participate. And I've encouraged people in this constituency, if you're not prepared to do those things where I'm concerned in 27, then vote for someone else. And they look at me like I'm crazy. Maybe I am. But I believe that, you know, if I'm going to represent folk, then it has to be, I can't represent you by guessing what you believe, you know. I have to actually talk with you. And one of the things that's been most encouraging in this constituency is the young people. If we haven't signed up more than 50 of them, we've not signed up one. And it's not just mommy or daddy signing them up on their behalf. We have taken the view that we must talk to them. And so we've engaged them where they live and what they're doing and how they operate and what is of interest to them. Because people, you know, I don't do politics. Really? Politics affects every aspect of your life, from the cradle to the grave. So you don't have to do politics with a big P. You have to do it with a small p. And we've talked to every single person where they live and what affects them in their lives. And so in the case of young people, they just graduated, and we do it regardless of their voting age, whether they're able to vote or not. If I run into young people, 12, 13, 14, 15, I interrogate them like I do anybody else. What's the plan? What do you like to do? What do you want to be? How do you know? And give them some advice about how it is so they can get there. And if they're older than that and voting for the first time, then we talk to them about what that means.
that, you know, it's not this historical perspective. Well, that's part of it, and you should do that part of it. We said, but it's far more important that if you want to go away to university, if you want to get a college education, and your parents are working class, so that means you need some help, then you must look at the two options that you have. The one that provides funding for you to be able to do that, and the one that's taking funding away. The one that's going to support you in terms of providing employment when you come back, so that you get the experience, so you're not faced with the hurdle of, oh no, get some experience somewhere in the planet and then come back and talk to me. No, it has to be actually where they live. And I'm convinced that there has been an epiphany in this entire country in terms of the understanding of democracy that the average person has, that they have power. They have power. We have 1,272 voters in this constituency. If they all vote, they're all going to be my boss. They're all going to be my boss. Now, that doesn't mean I come as somebody who has to do 1,272 opinions. Democracy means the majority rules. And so we will, you know, we will participate and represent their interests. But at the end of the day, they are the people who I'll end up working for. And people have to understand that, you know, if you elect somebody to represent you, they're not to the mountain born. You're not crowning a king. You're not creating, you know, somebody who is no longer with and of you. They are. And they must remain. And one of the things that we've committed to, I mean, we put out an annual schedule of our clinics, and ours go to the end of June next year, because we didn't know the election's going to be called. So ours go to June next year. Next year we'll put out another one. It's the first Saturday of the month. And for 50-odd Saturdays since 2013, we've been at this, you know, we've been at our location. People know it. People understand the concept. People know where to find us. And so it's an easy process. You have to want to serve, though. You have to want to communicate with people. You have to want to talk to folks. And I enjoy that part of it. Even the ones that are telling me off, I take that too, because sometimes it's from a point of not the full knowledge, and so I'm able to share with them, because they, you know, some of the questions that you've asked today, they challenged me on and said, you know, why would you do this? And people have to understand you also have to stand for principle. In the case of the Uyghurs, that's a matter of principle. Now, you may disagree with me in terms of what we did. I got that. But you cannot, in reality, again, go back to the family analogy. You can't say, okay, buddy, and I'm writing you off because of one decision you made. Really? Do you do that in your own family? You don't. You have disagreements, and you come to some compromise. And so you're going to take one mistake. In your view, it's a mistake. And that's what you judge things on. Well, you're free to do that. But I would suggest that you look at the whole concept, the whole record of our term in government. And don't say to me that we haven't made any progress or we haven't done any good, just as I wouldn't say about the current government. It hasn't been all bad, of course not. I mean, one of the things that they did that we vehemently disagreed with was the creation of the Bermuda Tourism Authority. But if they look in this document, there's nowhere in there does it say that we're going to abolish it. It's something that has been created, and we've grown to see what the potential of it is. And there's reference to it in here about how it is that we're going to enhance what it is that they're doing. But that's called democracy. And so this whole concept that, you know, politicians or people who, you know, choose to represent you know everything and know all, and you can't communicate with them, is absolute bonkers. And I think that is going away. People understand that they have power, and they must hold us accountable, and we require that they hold us accountable. This is going to be this is a set of promises. I don't make promises to anybody lightly. I don't make promises that I don't intend keeping. And this is a set of promises that we have made to the people of this country, that if you elect us in this term, this is what we will set out to do. Now, to be clear, and in the interest of full disclosure, there may be some things in here that we don't do, you know. But that's as a result of the circumstances that prevail at the time you come to do it. It may be a question of, oh, that was done because you done something else over here and that problem went away. The key in that, though, is it must be explained to folk why it is that you're not doing item 29. Because we sorted it out over here, or the problem no longer exists.
and we're going to do something different. But you must explain it. But this has to be the roadmap. This has to be the report card that people will mark every step of the way. I mean, there's a 100-day plan in here. I've looked through it all, but it's fairly steep in terms of what it is that we've committed to do. But what it means is that if we're successful, we have to hit the ground running on the 19th of July. Go to work. Get to work. And that's what they will see. If they elect the PLP government, we are going to work. We are not going to make the mistakes of the past. We're not going to be turned deaf to the people who support us. We're not going to be turned deaf to the people who we will be elected to serve. And so as a result, they have a clear choice to make. The right course or the left course. And what I suggest they do is to look at the two documents and ask whatever questions of whomever purports to be their representative that they wish. It's not a whole lot of time left, but that's fair enough.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.